a better job of answering questions about your account than under the old regime where you actually spoke to someone almost next door. So this is a very different, but still, I think, pertinent example of globalization of production. For this alternative theory, it turns out to be necessary to introduce more than just the two skill levels, the high skill and low skill workers that I've been talking about so far. In the full-fledged model, which I'm not going to go into today, there's a very large number of skill levels. For the purpose of my discussion here, let's suppose that there are 4 skill levels. Four is enough to make the point. And you should think of production as the process of taking workers and assigning them tasks. So the production process is a collection of tasks which have to be performed by workers. I'm going to suppose, again, to make matters simple, that there are exactly 2 tasks. There's what we might call a managerial task, which is highly sensitive to the skill level of the person in that job. And then there's what I'll call a subordinate task, where the skill level of the person doing the job doesn't matter so much. As before, there will be 2 countries. One country is rich, one country is poor, and once again, the wealth of a country will correspond to the skill levels of its workers. So the rich country, I'm going to suppose that the skill levels are labeled A, B, C, and D. A is higher than B, B is higher than C, C is higher than D. We'll suppose that the rich country, most of its workers are relatively high skilled, so they're A level and B level. The poor country has workers of lower skill, C level and D level, and as I said, A is bigger than B, is bigger than C, is bigger than D. Now, we get output, we get production by filling the 2 tasks, the managerial task and the subordinate task, with workers. So another way of putting it is to say that we're going to match managers with subordinates. And how much output we end up getting is going to depend on the skill levels of the people that we put into these jobs. Now, perhaps some of you are not accustomed to seeing what economists call a production function. Don't worry about it if this is something unfamiliar. The idea here, let me make sure I'm using the pointer. Whoops, I did the wrong thing. Where is the pointer here? The laser pointer? Is it the thing in the middle? Oh, okay, thank you. Here we go. What this is saying is that output is more sensitive to the skill of the person in the managerial position than the skill of the person in a subordinate position. So M is the skill level of the managerial person, S is the skill level of the subordinate person, and output is M squared, which means that as we vary the managerial skill, we're going to have a very large variation in output, not as big a variation in output as we vary the subordinate skill. So just to take an example, suppose that the managerial skill were 4 and that the subordinate skill were 3, then we would get 4 squared, 4 times 4 from the manager times 3 from the subordinate, or a total output of 48. Now I'll suppose that that the labor market, the process by which workers get assigned to firms or production units is competitive. That is, there are a lot of firms, companies, there are a lot of workers, and so the competition between employers is fierce enough so that that's going to force the matching process to result in as high an output level as is technologically feasible. Competition enhances efficiency. That's a basic proposition in economics. Now, what does that imply for the way that workers get matched with one another? Well, let's again do a couple of thought experiments. Suppose we had a labor force consisting, it's a very small labor force, it consists of 2 workers of skill level 3, I'll call those 3 workers, and 2 workers of skill level 4, I'll call those 4 workers. Now, how would we expect them to be matched in order to produce outputs? Well, there are 2 ways that they could be matched. We might have one of the 4 workers matched with one of the 3 workers, and the other 4 worker matched with the other 3 worker. That's what I'll call cross-matching, where the workers occupying the 2 different positions are at different skill levels. In this case, if you work out the total outputs, it turns out to be 96. But another possibility is that you could have one 3 worker matched with the other 3 worker. One of the 4 workers matched with the other 4 worker. That's what I'll call homogeneous matching, where you have the same skill level in both the managerial and subordinate position. In both, these are 2 different firms. And in that case, the total output would be 91. Well, 96 is bigger than 91, and so in this example, we would expect competition to lead to this matching pattern, because that leads to a higher output, a more efficient level of output. But if we had a somewhat different labor force, if we had two